Hebrews chapter 10, beginning from verse number 1. Now, this is what Apostle Paul says. He said, for the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things. Now, this is an attempt to explain to us that when we travel into the Old Testament and we see the patterns that are established in the Old Testament, the interpretation of those patterns in the New Testament is not always going to be in the shape that they are presented in the Old. There are a few adjustments that apply in most cases. You don't take it hook, line, and sinker. Now, he's saying that the Old Testament, this is the purpose that it serves. It is a shadow of things to come. Are you there? It is pointing to things that are yet to come. It is a prophetic drama about things that God wants to do. So, I hope you know sometimes. Have you taken a look at your shadow? Do you see your shadow sometimes? I know you don't. When it is 12 noon, try to trace your nose in the shadow. You will discover that the nose you will see in the shadow might be like this. You are not following me. You might find a part of your body that is highlighted by the shadow in a proportion bigger than the actual image. So if the Old Testament is a shadow of things to come, that means it is a prophetic pointer pointing to realities that will be obtainable in the future. Are you there? The second thing we need to note is that it is not the very image of the things. It is not the very image of the things. So there is no way you can understand the things by just solely looking at the shadow, because it is not the very image of the thing. So we are not supposed to practice priesthood in the exact similitude as it is found in the Old Testament. But we know that what is obtainable in the Old Testament is pointing to something that is to come. Does that make sense? All right, so it's Apostle Paul that is trying to give us the adaptation principle. And the adaptation principle is the spiritual explanation that causes us to have the new eyes and new lenses to see the New Testament in the Old Testament. Once you are armed with the fact that it is a shadow, the second thing you need to be armed with is that it is a shadow of good things to come. That means it's prophetic. Third thing you need to be armed with is that it is not the very image of the things. Can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers thereunto perfect. So the sacrifices that were offered in the Old Testament did not have the capacity to make the people that attended to them and the people that benefited from them perfect. So there was a deficiency with the actual Old Testament structure. Verse 2. For then will there not have ceased to be offered. That is, if they were perfect, God would have stopped there and would have been operating that kind of priesthood. And there will be no need for it to cease, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. So there is a cyclical process that must be undertaken, because the sacrifices did not have the adequate spiritual stature to undo sins. So there is a ritual around sins that was done every year. Yes, verse 4. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he cometh into this world, he says, sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body has now prepared me. This is a transition that I need to draw our attention to. Are you there with me? Now, the transition that I'm trying to draw your attention to is the key to understanding New Testament priesthood. And this transition has to do with migrating from sacrifice to a living sacrifice. That's what that scripture is. How many of you still remember that in the Old Testament, you bring a goat, and the goat is what is sacrificed? So, and the implication of that sacrifice applies to you, even though you were not the one that physically suffered the depravity that the goat was subjected to. But the spiritual effect of the sacrifice of the goat applies to you. Now, what Jesus did when he came to become the ultimate sacrifice was that it was no longer goats that were sacrificed. It became an experience that a man will experience. Do you understand that? Or you didn't get that? So we moved, there is a slight movement there from sacrifice to living sacrifice. Now, our New Testament priesthood is founded, as you will see in a moment, is founded and predicated upon the efforts that Jesus has already made. And you need to understand it very well so that when we begin to apply it, as we apply it in the natural, it might not look powerful. But the consequence it has in the spirit is the reason why we operate that way. Is that clear? Remember that all forms of priesthood in the New Testament is predicated on what Jesus did. Because without the sacrifice of Jesus, we'll not even have any priesthood at all. I'm going to show you the infrastructure that was in the temple. When you move from the outer court into the holy place, the first furniture you will see is what is called the brazen altar. All forms of priesthood in that corridor is based on that brazen altar. Those of you that are students of the Bible, that have labored in the Bible for a while, you understand the meaning of brazen, bronze. Bronze means judgment. And judgment was what was revealed to Adam in the garden when God told him that in the day that you eat of this fruit, you shall surely die. That's the position of God's justice system. So the judgment that was already hanging over man on the account of that rebellion existed before man committed the infringement. Is that not how law is? You are not following. That's how law is. I don't know, maybe Barrister Cashapp will help us. If somebody steals a goat and it's confirmed that the person has stolen a goat, what is the likely penalty that is going to receive? Please arm him with a microphone, please. What is the likely penalty that the person... Please, when you are coming for Bible study, come armed because you can be confronted with the microphone. What's the likely penalty that the person is to face if it is confirmed that the person stole a goat?
The law that is already there will be applied against the person to the effect that he should either be imprisoned for a term of years,
okay,
or its equivalent of a fine.
Okay, if someone breaks into a residence and in his efforts somebody dies, what's the position of the law about that situation?
Okay, that's a capital offense.
It's a capital offense.
Yes. So straight away he will. The law will require him to also be imprisoned for a term of years.
For a term of years.
Yes.
You see. So what I'm trying to say is that the position of the law is already established about these crimes. It is not when you commit a crime that the law will be formulated to accommodate you.
Yeah.
The law already has penalties. Okay, that's what I just wanted you to confirm.
Thank you.
Now, so what we are seeing here is that God told Adam that if he eats of that fruit, that the judgment about that level of departure is already captured in the justice system of heaven. So when Jesus came, the major assignment of Jesus was to create an escape route for humankind because humankind is already on the bad side of the law. And in order for Jesus to make a way for humankind, he had to receive that judgment. He had to submit to that judgment. So the ultimate purpose of Jesus in his ministry was to offer himself in order to satisfy the claims of divine justice, but the principle of substitution, so that you and me can have a way to experience life. So Jesus took our place in judgment so that we can take his place in life. That's the story of the gospel. Now, so all of our priesthood is based on the foundation of what Jesus did. So what Jesus did is what is referred to, or what is seen as, the brazen altar in the holy place. Are you clear? Are you there? So the sacrifice of Jesus is the biggest altar that you can ever find. And our priesthood is based on interacting with that is sacrifice and applying it in various fashions, in various forms. Because in Jesus, sacrifice passes to become a living sacrifice. Sacrifices previously were external things that were given. But the priesthood that Jesus came to manifest, which is the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, it is human beings that become the sacrifice. The reason why you have given me a body is so that I can become the ultimate sacrifice. Can you see that the sacrifice now has moved from animals and it has moved to a man? You get that? A body. That was the reason why Jesus was assigned a body, so that he can pay the ultimate price, the ultimate type of sacrifice that will be pleasing in the sight of God, that will satisfy the claims of divine justice. Go on. If you come and bring a bull and sacrifice, it might cover your offense for a time. But the implication of that sacrifice and the vocabulary of the blood that is shed will begin to wane in the realm of the spirit until it fully evaporates after a time. So you will need to redo that sacrifice again so that you can experience and enjoy the same level of immunity. Are you there? All right. So the reason why the sacrifices had to be cyclical and continuous is because they did not have the ability to satisfy God. Now, this is January, so most of you bought Christmas goat, bought Christmas ram. Please, what is the average cost of Christmas goat? Pastor Chooks, I know you, a goat laid down its life so that you could celebrate. What was the cost of that goat? 60,000, depending on the size of the stomach. Now, okay. Let me ask you a question. If every time you lie, you need to bring a goat to consider 2023, how many goats would you have been required to make available? So if you study the book of Galatians, you will find a terminology called the curse of the law. Have you seen that? The curse of the law. You know what the curse of the law is? The requirement for sacrifices, for offenses. Even if you are a billionaire and you are offering one goat of 60,000 naira per lie, and maybe the one for fornication might be ram. The other day we were sending somebody with bride price to go and pay for a lady in Botswana. It was 7 cows. 7 cows. How much does a cow cost? I didn't know that it's only in Nigeria that they price around bride price. If you try to price somewhere else, it's an insult. So when they say 7, they mean 7. So, are you there? So it means, according to Botswana culture, the cost of a man is 7 cows. So if the person commits murder and somebody dies, the number of cows you need to bring to atone for that error might be 7 cows. How much does 1 cow go for? you're already seeing that all of us will be in debt. None of us will be rich enough to cover the level of atonement that is needed in order for us to walk free of the wrath of God. None of us. So that is what we call the cost of the law. The cost of paying for your infringements against God. You and me don't have enough resources to pay for it. Exactly. All right, so Jesus is bringing a new kind of priesthood. And the new kind of priesthood that is bringing on the scene is what we call the priesthood of the living sacrifice. This priesthood is going to affect you and me. The peace offering is going to be the barometer through which you navigate in the spirit realm. That barometer is critical. It's the thermometer that shows you the measurements where you are doing your transactions with God. Are you there? I want us to make a commitment to God this 2024. That the description of my life will not be captured in sins and trespasses, but it will be captured in loyalty to the Holy Ghost, loyalty to Jesus, and a walk of holiness that is made possible by the cross. Are you there? Let the desire to walk with you be so intense that it will best every other mundane desire that locks upon my soul. A man that is going to walk the walk of holiness is such a man that desires God above everything else. The reason why the proposal to cut corners, the proposal to sin, the proposal to violate God becomes interesting is because there is something in your heart that holds a higher place than God. The moment God becomes the idol in your heart, the highest island in your heart, it will be easy for you to seek him out, to walk with him. You become sensitive to him. What he says will matter to you. How his spirit feels will matter to you. Don't get it wrong. You are not a priest if you have not accepted the walk of holiness. Because for all priests, there is a culture, and it's the culture of holiness. The latitude of the temple is measured according to holiness. We have an outer court, we have the holy place, and then we have the Holy of Holies. If you are walking from outside into inside, then your holiness level will begin to shine brighter and brighter and brighter, so that you can stand and do business with the living God. The sacrifices of Jesus has already implicated us. He gave a burnt offering so that you can live a consecrated life. He gave a sin offering so that you can experience redemption. The potential of his blood supersedes what was required to pay for your redemption. So he still has extra capacity which can be used for the forgiveness of sins. If you see the protocol from sin into redemption, from redemption you have forgiveness, and then there is a demand for you to walk the walk of holiness and to access the mind of God and the will of God. It's already showing you a graph. God is taking you from the land of sin and incorporating you into his kingdom, and he's insisting on the walk of holiness as you progress. Before you give God an offering, you must be sure that God can accept your person.